What does it take to create a vibrant, thriving life? First, the sad news is that Thoreau was right. Most people are leading quiet lives of desperation, lacking in meaning, fulfillment, and vitality. But we choose more. We choose to create extraordinary lives. And the Art of Vibrant Living show entertains you with inspiration, empowerment, and education to create your life into a masterpiece. It's time. Let's vibe up. Aloha, y'all. Daniel Aaron with you. I am your host, and this is the Art of Vibrant Living show. We got it going on today. It's going to be such an amazing show. I'm already excited. Our guest is amazing. I'll tell you about her in a moment. First, though, the Art of Vibrant Living show kind of implies what it's about in the name, right? It's about you living your most vibrant, thriving life. So our job is to entertain, yes, inspire, good, mostly though, empower, and we need a little two-way street action on that though. To empower you, that means that you, I ask of you, I implore you, take at least one thing from today's show. Our guest is going to drop many gold nuggets with you. I know it, I feel it. They don't mean as much unless you say, yeah, I'm going to try that on. I'm going to put that into play in my life, where the rubber meets the road is integrating and applying what you learn. So would you do that? Would you agree? Let's make it even more valuable for you. And by the way, on that note, if you would like to create something more different, better in your life, if you want to move away from something or create something new, let's have a conversation. That's my jam. I love helping people to create what they want. So reach out to me, daniel@danielaaron.com. I would love to meet you and support you with that. Okay. Donna Piper, MA Therapeutic Coach, trauma expert, certified Akashic Records Reader, is a dedicated healer and guide specializing in empowering female entrepreneurs to overcome past traumas and self-doubt, unlocking their true potential for success and fulfillment. Utilizing the transformative power of the Akashic Records, Donna provides safe and nurturing space for emotional healing, helping clients to build confidence, trust in themselves and their relationships, and thrive in both their personal and professional lives. With her deep passion for energy healing and spirituality, Donna is committed to creating life-changing experiences for those seeking to feel seen, heard, and loved, fostering a journey of growth and vibrant living. Ooh, I love those words. Thank you so much for that, Donna. So cool that you were here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm really excited. I've been looking forward to this conversation for ages. I love your combination of experiences, the vibe, and that you're focused on helping women specifically in that way. And good golly, we know the world needs more empowered, healed women right now, especially as leaders, to turn this ship around. So thank you for doing that work. And now I have the advantage over our audience in this rare instance, which is I know you a little bit already. For those in the audience that don't know you yet, would you share a little bit about how you got to this point in doing this work that you're doing?
Yes, I'll try to make it really brief. As you know, I'm a talker, but I started as a therapist. I was a dance movement therapist, and I'd always been drawn to trying to help people and figure out, like all my friends would come to me and ask for advice, and I really liked to give that. And then I figured I needed to get more education to do that in a more formal, responsible way. So I went to get my master's, and getting my master's, I had a mentor that introduced me to a shaman, and I worked and studied with him. So that kind of was the bridge between what I do now is coaching. So I help people, and then bring in the spiritual aspect. And meeting the shaman kind of brought me down into a path of really to figure out, like, okay, how do all these great things that I'm learning and knowing, how do I actually show up where I have a lot of love and compassion? How do I regulate my emotions? How do I heal my own wounds and traumas and heartbreaks? And how, when it comes up, how can I actively see what's going on with me and transform it in that moment? And that's, I think, the hardest thing of life is, like, you have all these emotions, you have all this stuff, you have pressures of how you should act, or, all of our perceptions of what we want, how we want to live, and how we maybe actually are. And how do you actually make that work? If you read a good book, or if you get a gem, like, how do you actually do it? So that led me to tons of education, my own spiritual journey for 15 years. And it's brought me to a place of, really, there's some simple things, but they're not easy when you are trying to, change your life. And it really is like how you introduce the show, is like, you have to try them on, and you have to try it on for a while. There has to be some discipline, and that's not, and usually that sounds like, oh, I don't want to be disciplined, or I can't, right? It's like, oh, another thing. I just want to do the thing. And can I feel better if I just think of, just agree with it? But to really try it on and embody it and get it into your cells. And that's always the work that I did, is how to have our body and our mind work together with our soul. And they don't always jive, and that's okay. They're not supposed to. You're supposed to have moments of dark and light. So I think I answered.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you. Yeah. And I mean, it brought a few pieces to me that I'll echo back a little bit before I ask you another piece from that. Well, I love, already one of the things I see about you is well, here's what happened for me is, as you were describing your journey from, say, the academic world to meeting a shaman, for me, I had my very first experience after a divine whack upside the head, which led me to saying, oh my goodness, what do I do now? How do I live? My old world is gone. The first guide that I received coming out of that experience was a woman who had a master's degree. She was a clinical psychologist, and she was also a shamanic counselor. And for me, that was just so helpful to appease, like, the rational mind part of me, have one foot in something that felt approved of or reliable from my experience then, and yet another opening into the kind of healing and world that's available beyond the rational mind, right? And I see that you've got one stool leg in each of those worlds, and another stool leg in the world of business, right? Because and so many of the people that I work with and meet, they might have the big heart and the aptitude for healing, yet struggle with the financial, the business side of it, and so can't bring it forward in a way that's sustainable and really works. And so I love that you've got all of that together. And I love what you said about not just trying something on. Yeah, it's the only knowledge that counts as experiential knowledge, though you took it a step further and said, for a while, right? It's not just dip your toe in it. You got to get all the way in the water and hang out there for a little while, and it might get hot or cold, right? And you brought up the word discipline, which is great. I struggled for so long with discipline, and I remember shortly after becoming a father, reading a book, and it described discipline and disciple, right, being the same root, as joyful follower, right? So the discipline is joyfully following the new possibility, right? The thing that leads to a different way of being in the world. So beautiful. Okay. So I guess we got to go straight in with this, because I know at least some of our audience would be like, that all made sense to me, except for in when Daniel read Donna's bio, the Akashic, is that like the 49th state? What is Akashic? What does that mean? Will you let us know what that is for anybody who, that might sound weird or foreign to?
Yes. So the Akashic record is, so it's a field. So there's different ways to describe it. Now with science, you might relate to as quantum, but basically the Akash is a ancient field, and everyone and everything has an Akashic record. So we're all made of energy. So every time that your soul, from that first moment it incepted, this energy blueprint that you have, that really in it, you could think of it as a library, kind of however you want, a digital library that is your record. It has everything that your soul's ever done, will do, all deeds and actions. Everything is available. So it's just this vast well of knowledge that's personal to you. So, but it's not faded, and it's not like channeling, or it's not this other thing. It's really about moving into this field to open up your personal record. And once that happens, then the information that comes through is specific for you. So, I have a lot of education, and there's lots of techniques and things that are great. But as you were saying before, I don't remember the exact words, but basically there's 95% plus of what we do is in the unconscious. And I was always really curious about the unconscious. And how do you tap into it? How do you know? Like, how do my rational brain know that I'm there? And with this tool of the Akashic Records, and that's how predominantly I work with my clients now, is once their records are open, information that comes through is specific for them. So I don't have to rely totally on my education or my intuition. And it's a active experience where you actively participate. I'm just not telling you information, but you go on your own journey. You actively go into this state, and you also get the information. So then not only does it help you build trust in your intuition and feel like confident that you know that you're on the right steps because there's someone there reflecting to you. So you have these experiences where you could get information about anything from like, what would make me, easier for me to be disciplined about something I want to do, to how can I, start my business, or I do a lot of healing in there. Trauma is my kind of specialty, what it was in my graduate work. Post-traumatic stress disorder is what I worked with, and that's what I like to work with. And it's really, we all have traumas. Then that's neutral. It's not you did something bad or good or whatever, but we have undigested information and energy in our systems, physically, psychologically, all of it. And it's going into that and dissolving it in a non-invasive, you don't relive it. I never believed in that anyway. I'm not forcing trauma. So you learn to see, like, even if you understand it, cool, the story doesn't change. It's actually the experience of it. So to dissolve it. So you could still say, this is why I think, but I had this experience. But once all the emotions and all that is totally digested, it is just a story. It's a memory. It's not putting your system into this super complex thing to protect you. So the Akashic Records is really this beautiful field where everything, all potentialities happen, and you get the information that you need for that moment. It's not for like 10 years from now. It's like what you need in that moment to go to it's like little breadcrumbs. You do that one thing and it opens you up to more possibilities and more possibilities.
Cool. Okay. Really, really interesting. I love the way you explained that. And there's 428 questions that come from that. But let's go to this one though, because despite my silly joking about the Akashic Records before in that terminology, I've heard lots about the Akashic Records over the years. And I love the way you describe it. It's very simple that way. And most of the time when I've heard people speak about their work with the Akashic Records, I've heard them describe their experience of like, well, it's like a library. All the information is there. And yet what I'm hearing from you, and I might have got this wrong, so please adjust my perception here, is that what you help create with your clients, it's not just getting some information, like getting a book out of the library or a movie or a story, that there's so what's the process like for digestion? What there's got to be a difference, right, between just getting the info and the digestion. Am I on track with that?
Yes. Yeah. Like there's, I'm sure of all the millions of people in the world, there's different ways to open the records and as it evolves and everything. But as we kind of become more conscious as a society, which it has been shifting, there is more people that are interested in vibrant living and what does that mean, and the unconscious, world, and meditation and all of that. Like when I started this 20 plus years ago, somatic work wasn't a thing. Like dance movement therapy was like, huh, you're helping, do you dance them out of their trauma? Like, what do you do? Like, so now trauma informed and somatic work and all this stuff is really like, kind of all over, which is great. So the more evolved we are, the more information, like we get more, it's not so foreign. We're kind of more interested in it. We're not so resistant. So how I was trained and I work in the records is, yes, there's information that you get because you tap into all the information that you need. And it's past, present, and future. So, but because it's not something that's like, oh, here's information, what are you going to do with it? Because, I don't know if anyone else has this experience, or you had this, Daniel. If I've ever gone to someone to be like, oh, help me out, like do a reading, do something, and I just get information, that's cool. But what do I do with it? Like, I love human design. So this is not a knock to it, but I've got a lot of readings with different people like, oh, let me do that for you. So I get information like, okay, cool, I'm this number and I'm that thing. But okay, well, how does it work for me? Like, how can I use it in my daily life that's going to make an impact? So as we sit down and do a reading, there's a prayer that happens. We connect. I open your records. We start, and then we just begin with wherever you're at, whatever the question is. And then we follow the energy of what happens. So, and I trust that what comes through and how I'm guided. Sometimes people are guided to do inner work. They're guided to ask more questions. Or sometimes they're guided to go back to the time in the past, either a moment ago or in other lifetimes, to heal something that is affecting them now. And you could talk about, we have a lot more language about that stuff. So it was journeying. Journeying is systematic journey, right? It's soul retrievals, kind of that same along that line. And all these word things kind of intermix in this world. But so it comes forth where you're also interactive. It's not just me telling you and get information, but then you have an opportunity to be like, I don't understand what that means, or what does this word mean? So you go deeper into either understanding what the information is coming through so you can actually utilize it to do something, whatever your question was. Like maybe you wanted to have a better relationship with someone, and maybe you got the first thing was, I don't know, to wear a certain color, around them. And then be like, so the next question be like, well, why that color? What does that mean? And usually, always, it comes down to it's meaningful for the person, for you. Like, I don't know why I would have you, have a color, but it's personal to and there's a reason why. Maybe you feel really good or relaxed, or there's something about that that puts your energy field into being more receptive. And for you, if you may not even know that colors affect you as much as they do, and maybe they do. So that is really something. So and that's why it's individual for everyone. So I don't have just this mass amount of stuff to give out. It's really, and you're interacting, asking questions. And then when the journey happens, you are actually in your own journey having that experience. Because the best thing about experiential work is that once it's happened and it's done, it's done. You can always bring your mind back into it and say, no, that didn't really happen, or what if, but your internal system, your unconscious system knows that that's been resolved. So then the next step is, if you've created boundaries or patterning around protection because you're just used to being protected, then it gives you an opportunity to start to shift those and create new patterns that support this new way of healing, or whatever you want to, you're like in. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's cool. Well, and I really get that the work you do is very customized, and it kind of brings me back to what I was saying before about my experience. Like it's my experience is useful to have something for the rational mind, because there's a part of me, at least, and I think probably a lot of people, like I want to understand something, yet that again only goes so far. So having this other side of it, and an experience, right? Like, okay, well, we don't know why wear that color, yet in the experience of it, something will occur, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So, and the way you described it, journey, I had never thought of it that way, which reminds me of what we were speaking about earlier in the shamanic world, and it really sounds like it's about, again, not just the information, but this experiential process. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So, what what's it look like for you now, and the way you work with people? Do you do just one-off sessions with them, or do you work with people over an extended period of time? And what kind of results do people get? I imagine it's all very different, because everybody's needs and experiences and records are different. But have you noticed any patterns?
Yes. So I do offer one like hour sessions, but I do ask that people commit for a while, because it isn't just it's like, it says it's a reading, it's more of a consultation, it's more of a healing. Like anything, like if you do it once, you get information and it may be great, but then you have to implement that. If you don't implement it, then okay, cool, you know this stuff. But once you start implementing it, other things arise. So it's like, if you want to get to X, it takes a minute to get there. It's not just like you get this information. I wish it was like that. And sometimes people have that, but the vast majority of humans get information, whether it's like a most amazing thing, like, oh my God, you're gonna, whatever, meet the love of your life if you go to someone, or, you get a good card pull or whatever. But you have to be doing action. The universe loves action. So, we have these dreams, and that's why I love working with entrepreneurs, women, everyone. And I'll, because I love seeing their dream come true. So whatever that is. So, and it does happen a lot. I don't have like data per se, but all of my clients that come to me with whatever their initial, typically they come to me because something's not working out. They're suffering, something's not, there's a gap between their dream and the reality. And maybe they're doing manifestation work, maybe they're doing all the things, but it's not happening. And then usually when that happens, there's like a wound or a trauma or something that just needs to be dissolved. I used to say blocks. I've changed my language, because all it's just energy. You can't destroy energy, you can only transmute it. So taking whatever's wrapped up in that like thing that's stopping you, it's usually out of protection because your system is like on high alert, like, no, if you do that, there's danger. We don't want to do it. So your ego's in there, your body's in there, all these things. So once it gets dissolved, then you're able to either, a few things happen. Sometimes you're like, ooh, I didn't even really want that thing. I thought I wanted it. I was tied to this thing because I thought I should or would, or if this was my standard. And then once the underlying issue gets dissolved, then you're like, oh, I really want this thing. This really brings me joy here. Or it allows, each time you do this work, it allows you to have a different perspective, and it's an expansion. And then, with anything with expansion, it's great to expand, but you're always going to come down, and you could just pull the old stuff back in. So in that expansion, as we work together, there's new ways to be like, so what are my behaviors now to support this new thing that I want? What are the action steps? Because, conscious mind is dreams. Everything else is, what is your alignment to it? And if you take action to those steps, then that's actually how you get what you want. The universe likes that. It likes to, because it just responds to whatever you're doing. So if there's no action, who's responding to that, because not an action is also an action. I think that's a better way to say it. There's some other colloquialism, but
well, yeah, no, I get exactly what you mean. And right, it's like the great GPS analogy. If the car is not in motion, it's really hard for the maps or the directions to tell you where to go. Though as soon as you get moving, doesn't matter which direction you're going in, it's going to correct you, right? You have to get in motion though. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and you spoke about that every now and then there's like, Eckhart Tolle or Byron Katie, and then, bing, and they wake up and everything, like, boom, the past is gone. And for most of the rest of us, it takes a minute or two or three or some months or years. And so, yeah, there's an advantage for you working with people longer term. And I don't remember if you use this word, but the way I heard it was like, the insights are great, though integration is key and vital for that. So what's it like? Do you offer or suggest for people or for yourself work with rituals or protocols or practices on a daily basis that help with the transformation?
Yes. In general, just for myself, what I do is I used to have a very rigorous like meditation. I was hour in the morning, hour in the evening. That I don't do as much. When I was really like, trying to anchor myself into my own heart, into my world, and what even does that mean? And, I had to do, for me, that helped because I really needed to get to the point where I could accept myself totally, which that is something this is why, this, like, again, this stuff isn't like rocket science, but if there's things that are living in you that you don't want to see and you think you're hiding, but we're not, we project it onto other people. Everyone else sees our stuff, but we think we're hiding or we don't want to deal with it or it's too uncomfortable. Going in and doing the spiritual work, doing any sort of self-exploration, usually there's a lot of condemnation and judgmentalness that comes up. And how to get over and dissolve those things and look at your experiences without self-judgment and without condemnation, because you can't grow and change if you condemn yourself and are judging it. It's really to try to come up with self-acceptance. And that also is forgiveness around there, forgiving yourself and just being like, okay, cool. Like, and typically most, like, unless you've actually done really something against someone that's like, not great, but like murder or something. But even then it's like, in the spiritual world, you also can be forgiven and redeemed, but the things that we think are so awful about ourselves really aren't that big of a deal. Other people will be like, oh, what, huh? Like you're, just really imprisoning yourself with all these horrible thoughts over something so insignificant. So the guilt and shame love to hide in the shadow, especially shame. And shame is part of that dark, like our shadow selves, or what we deny, we don't want to accept, we deem unlovable. So as you kind of go through this process, figuring out some sort of ritual so you can slowly allow yourself to start to see who you really are in those places and bring yourself into totality. Like, I don't think people are broken. I came from like a very educational sort of perspective. Like, okay, I learn something, I take a test, I do well. Like, it was very linear. And spiritual work is not, and self-growth is not linear. It's just about being curious. You have to start with just being like, I'm just being going to be curious about this thing. Notice if you're being really condemning yourself or having a lot of judgment, and allow yourself to just kind of feel and work with these emotions. Usually there's negative emotions that we deem them, like anger or sadness. The shame is silent, so we don't know this. It might be embarrassment. So finding a practice, whether it be meditation, and I have my clients sometimes start with just like a walking meditation, or just being aware, just touching their bodies simply, like, okay, right now I'm aware I'm in this chair and I'm talking to Daniel, or right now I am aware of my breathing, and slowly get into where you feel comfortable being with yourself. And the good thing when I work with people with the Akashic Records is usually a meditation, a practice comes through for them. So then that's a little easier too, because then it's specifically tailored for what they need to do. But in general, finding some sort, and it doesn't have to be, there has to be discipline and consistency, but it doesn't have to be rigid, if that makes sense. So finding, and there's tons of practices, whether it's grounding, going outside on a few moments outside on the lawn, or getting a grounding mat, connecting with your breath for, just doing a 4-4-4 breath, doing some stretching or movement so you get in your body, out of your head, walking. So there's so many different things that you could do to kind of cultivate moments of silence, so you could get really comfortable in the silence, and then that way you could really allow yourself to kind of start witnessing what you're doing without like reacting.
Beautiful. Thank you. Oh man, that's exciting. Yeah. I love that you spoke about forgiveness, and you used the word, it's a word I don't hear often. Use the word deem, as in, we deem something, we evaluate it, we judge it as. And a couple of things that popped up for me as you were speaking, that, like, yeah, it's so true what you said, that we think we're hiding these things about ourselves, and that because we deem them unacceptable or unlovable or wrong or bad, or and yet everybody else knows anyway. It's such a silly charade, right? I had a great experience. I hadn't thought of this in years. Probably 20 years ago, I was leading a group, and I was facilitating an exercise where, I forget how we did it exactly, but the invitation was to bring forth something that you've been hiding, right? And I intentionally allowed, maybe there were 35 people, allowed for moments of silence, and wait and see if somebody's going to say anything else. And finally, this one woman was so beautiful. She says, okay, fine, I'll say it. And so we're all like, oh my God, what's she going to say? What is it? And she's like, I was a stripper, and like, I don't know everybody's experience, but most of us were like, that's it? That's your big reveal? Like, well, I mean, okay, but who cares really? Like, that's not doesn't seem like a big deal to me. But what's so beautiful is for her, for whatever reasons, like this was some part of her life and her experience, and she'd kept it locked away and hidden all this time. And I was literally this morning doing my own self-creation, self-awareness practices. Part of the way I do it is through writing. And as I was writing something, I thought of that biblical expression: if you bring forth that which is inside you, it shall redeem you. If you fail to bring forth that which is inside you, it will destroy you. And so as you were speaking about that, that's what came to me. And it's just, and I use, forgiveness is an important part for me in my own practice as well as with others. And I'm always learning, and I'm, infinite room to grow in mastery toward that, because there's, very few things more important. And so let's see, I got a question for you around that, because my experience is at this point in my life, I feel like I have a fairly easy time forgiving myself. And sometimes that's true, but not always. Sometimes I've hit layers where it's like, oh, not that. No, I'm ashamed of that. I can't bring that out. And some of my clients, I meet people that, like, I've had the question a couple times recently. Well, what about when there's something you can't forgive yourself for? What about when there's something that shouldn't be forgiven? Right. Which we could say on a theoretical or intellectual plane, like, well, no, of course, everything is worthy of forgiveness. But first, when someone's in that mode where it's like, but not this, what do you say, or how would you work with that?
The same. Like, everything is forgivable. Like, that's like, there's the one thing I know for me in my spiritual journey, when it came to contradiction, I was like, like, no, things can't be contradictory. Like, how do I, you're supposed to be right or wrong, black. This plane we're in is all, polarities, right? So it's either white, black, whatever. So, or like, how can you say that and do this? Or, like, all of these things that happen. Like, for the example you gave, that the woman was a stripper for whatever reason, so that's condemned on one side and celebrated on another. You know what I mean? Like, anyone has an opinion about whatever it is, whether it is right or wrong, right? So the first part is to really just to start with the awareness that you have this thing you think is unforgivable, right? I used to, and I learned this from my master or spiritual teacher, to just be like, okay, I'm going to accept that I don't accept it right now.
Right.
Like, I have this thing, but I'm going to accept that this is really hard for me. Like, I think that this is unforgivable. And then slowly do work around to feel more comfortable about, like, so why is this thing so unforgivable, really what it is? And when it comes down to the cool thing about all the different modalities out there, theta work, and like all of them, they kind of all boil down to, and even psychology and life and spirituality, is like, our biggest fear is the fear of death. And typically, if you've ever done any theta work or any sort of like ask yourself so many questions work or gestalt work or what Rogerian stuff, it's like, who am I? And then, all of this. But it comes down to, right, whatever the issue is, one of the second to last question is that I would be alone. And then then the next question is, well, why are you afraid of being alone? Because I would die. So this plane is all about relationships, and that's how we see our stuff. That's the cool thing about, entrepreneurism. I also work with people with relationships. It's like, they're reflective of what's going on. Like, when you start your own business or when you do anything, like, you have this world where people see you, there's internal work that happens, like, you get pushed up against unconsciously, that brings out your values, how you think about yourself, all of these things. So it's a beautiful way to unmask. And when these things come up, people call them triggers, sometimes they're conflicts. I like to say that there's just like this nice neon sign saying this is ready for you to be dissolved. This is a pattern that you're aware of. So if it's something that you feel that is unforgivable, you can be grateful that this pattern came, that you're aware of it right now. So it's something in your world. And then you could start to slowly get to the place where you can eventually accept it and then forgive yourself, because, we're afraid that if really, typically in my experience, maybe there's something else out there contrary, but if the reason why I'm so don't want to forgive it, or I'm so attached to it, because I don't want anyone to know about it, because if they knew about it, they wouldn't love me. And if they didn't love me, then I would die. Basically, my psyche would die. And that is like on a spiritual path, parts of your personality fall away. They're supposed to. So we think that, well, we're trained societally in education is like you do all these things and it happens like this. And when it doesn't, then we don't know that it's a contradiction. So really, if you look at the earth that we live in, that's we're a reflection of inside, there's contradictions all over. And it's our stories or perceptions of if we think it's bad or good. And once we try to take that away and just be neutral about things, and then see what happens and look at, other than everything's right or wrong, but be neutral and then see how it affects us and how we can transmute that energy into something else. So into more of like joy and bliss, because that's really that's why we're here, is to have a life of joy of bliss. But we have all this other stuff that we get to go through as to learn about how to get through anger and stuff. And it's not that you just live this life and like, oh my God, everything is wonderful. It's you're real with what's going on. And it's a whole other conversation, but really learning how to experience your emotions without having stories around the emotion. And that's really the trauma and the wounding work. But, emotions really at their essence, like take a few minutes to feel, but we either have been told not to feel them, don't want to feel them, don't know how to feel them, don't know what to do with them. So we're always like, and then we create boundaries and stories about why we don't want to. So then it just like, eventually everything comes out, right? It's going to come out somewhere. So if we could just like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling really angry. Okay, maybe I can't now, but in like 30 minutes, I'm going to stop and I'm just going to feel the anger in my body, and I'm just going to let it come up. Or I'm feeling really sad. Let me just give myself like a timer, 5 minutes, to feel as sad as I possibly can and see if that changes. And maybe there's still more sadness there, but to figure out how to feel these emotions, because once we feel all these, if you totally feel emotion, it goes back to joy, but we have these emotions, and then we have these thoughts, and then we have this body, and it's kind of all, sometimes they're not in alignment. So doing any sort of self-reflection is amazing to get you to a place where you can like live life abundantly, and not just financially, but just feel like joyful in your life.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, boy, there's a lot of great stuff in what you just said. So I want to go back to one of the first things you said, though, because it's a brilliant twist on the forgiveness piece and I think I heard a similar thing in a book by Cherry Huber once. I forget the title, but it was kind of a book about all these different ways that we hate ourselves, and we've learned to hate ourselves or condemn, as you said earlier. And there's a great example. I remember it in there where somebody's like, I will not forgive myself for that. And then the person that was working with that person said, well, will you accept that you won't forgive yourself for that? No, I won't. I won't accept that. Okay. Well, will you accept that you won't forgive yourself for that? Okay, fine. Yeah, I will. Yeah, I won't accept that I won't forgive myself. And it's like if we keep going back step by step, at a certain point, we find something that we can allow, and that can be like the thread that starts to unravel the knot, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, and likewise, you reminded me of a great way of saying is, well, if it feels hard to forgive something, can we just say, okay, well, this is something that would be good to forgive or needs to be forgiven? It's just kind of like sometimes we have to go up to the edge of the cliff before and look over and say, no, I'm not ready to jump off, I'll go back. But now we've seen it, it gets a little more comfortable, a little easier.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a great reminder. Go ahead, please. You were going to say.
Yeah, no, because like with forgiveness and acceptance, forgiveness, even though they're very similar, the terminology, it's like surrender or giving, succumbing to. It's like the forgiveness. Sometimes we don't want to forgive because we really think that that's going to exonerate something
Yeah.
else, and you know, and it's just like that ego mentality of like, no, I'm going to put my foot in the ground. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to give the other person or myself or the situation the satisfaction of whatever that we are tied up into with our belief system, and however it makes us feel that we're safe and we feel like we have some control over it. So really to empower ourselves through the awareness and acceptance and forgiveness is very empowering, but until you go through the process of it and do the steps of like, I like that, I'm not going to accept that, I'm not going to accept or however you said it, like, yeah, it could be like 5 steps back, but you start to kind of get yourself in that flow, because those things really just everything, all of our experiences, if we don't have a way to release them or transmute them, they still kind of keep working out in our system. And they can affect our health, they can affect relationships. And sometimes we don't even know, sometimes we do, but a lot of times we don't even know where they've come from. So, really dissolving that, giving yourself an opportunity to be unburdened, does just open up a space where you can enjoy your life more. Um, so sorry.
Yeah. Well, cool. Okay. So you mentioned the importance of, well, you use different words, but I'll say emotional awareness, or the ability to feel different emotions. And I know for me as a kid, I got really good at not feeling things, right? That was like a strong survival mechanism for me. Later on in my life, when I started to, shift things a bit, I got into different types of breath therapy, which was really, really powerful for myself. And then I've used it with a lot of people, I led people with it. Analogy that often comes to me is it's like holding a beach ball underwater, right?
Mhm.
We can keep an emotion away for a pretty long time, but it takes energy, and yeah, that can compromise our health, our relationships, everything. And sooner or later, it's going to come up to the surface anyway, right? And so the power of emotions and the importance of feeling them and accepting them. And I love what you said about give it 5 minutes, give yourself a little timer for it. Um, what else can you say about for people that, I don't know, that don't feel able to access emotions? Like I know for me, even as I started to be able to feel sadness, anger was one that I was not, it took a long time before I could let myself feel that. So in your work or in your experience, what do you advise for helping people to come to a greater level of peace or facility with emotions?
Um, so part of I think my work and my fascination with therapy and emotions anyway is when I was 16, both of my grandfathers died a month apart. 3 weeks, and I was very close with them, and I was devastated. I still probably can cry right now about the whole thing, even though I did tons of work on it. And I remember specifically, like consciously, after my second grandfather died, it was just numb. And I was like, no, I am just going to do everything logical. Emotions are too much. There's too much heartache. It's too much pain. Why would I ever want to do that? Like, so I was 16. And that I just kind of shut myself off consciously from my emotions. And then as I started learning, like, intellectualism is not very highly ranked on like, there's a scale of how you like resilience and all these things that you use and different sort of mechanisms to protect yourself or interact in the world, and intellectual is one of them. It's not very high up, and I was like, oh gosh, well, that's not great. But like, kind of always the essence that it goes down to, like, whether there's anger or sadness, those are usually anger is the hardest, because we're not supposed to be angry. Like, angry destroys. Or if you have, we see it as all the really just, destructive sort of interactions with anger, right? Like, things escalate and then maybe people get shot or, whatever. Like, so it's tied to that. But also what it comes down to is not being able to receive love is the biggest thing. So when we start with emotions, giving and receiving love, like, love is the most transformative emotion there is out there as far as like what it could do, right? And we are conditioned a lot to be like, oh, but love is conditional. Like, whether you have a parent or if you're in a relationship, like, if they love me, they would treat me like this. There's a million books, there's a million social medias, red flags. This is how we should be in a relationship. This is how we receive love. But what we want as humans, and it's been studied, is we want to be seen, heard, and loved. We really want to be loved. We want to be connected. We want someone to appreciate us. And so try to strip down to that to help to kind of crack open yourself, to give yourself love, because what does that mean? But to receive like goodness, to receive that feeling. And then when you start to have that, that's usually how I work, is once you kind of explore your like love level, like most people, and we all do, like, oh, I can love someone, but it's hard for me to receive. But so my response to that always is, really, because of energy balance, like, if you really can only love how much you receive, it's really the inverse. So the more you could receive, that's how you could really love, right? If our heart becomes an open system where all of those little pains and heartaches and all those little things that we think are like against us and everything, they kind of get stored in there, that starts to get dissolved, then it's a little easier to be with anger and to be with grief. So kind of cultivating like going past those emotions, but to really like, okay, where is my level of self-love? How can I receive love? And working on the receiving end of it, especially through the back. And even if you're a chakra person or out there, just physically feel the back of your heart space being open and allow love to come in and then go out without getting like stuck. We always have these little sticky points that, things attach to. And the more we clean that out, then love can just go in and out. And once we start to do that, we start to feel like, okay, like the slights or the things I feel angry about or wounded about, once they're anchored in love as the foundation, they're easier to feel. And always just on top of that, like with anger, go into like, if you're angry, if it's in a moment, like it's either a child or a friend or someone, and you can remove yourself from the situation, see if you can, and then go sit and just feel your anger. Allow it just to kind of burn you up for like 5 minutes. But anger is like the quickest emotion. It's one of the harder ones. So that's why I always work with people in a different way to anchor it, so they have the space to feel it, because if it feels so overwhelming, you're not going to want to, because you feel it's going to destroy something in you. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And it's great the way you brought love into the conversation about other emotions, because when we have, one of the characteristics of love is it provides safety, right? It creates a container of safety. And on the flip side, without a sense of safety, it's hard to have love. So they work together. And it seems screamingly obvious to me that we also do well for this to add into this conversation, because if it's a new conversation for people, it's really important to know that there's a distinction between feeling an emotion and acting from the energy of that, right? And I remember for me, like when I learned repeatedly, because opportunities arose again, that I could feel anger without behaving like an angry person, that was so liberating, right? And there's nothing wrong, and there's a lot that's right with being able to feel everything, and then having that little refractory period get bigger, and then be able to choose, okay, what am I going to do with this? Or am I going to do nothing and just feel, and then, shift how I feel before I act. So
yeah. Mm-hmm.
awesome.
Giving
Okay.
yourself permission for that too. Giving yourself permission to feel angry, like it's okay to
Yeah.
feel angry, and do it in a safe space where you just feel it. You're not having to act it out. Is helpful. But anger is one of those things that'll like just take over your whole body, and you're like, oh, I'm already in it. But like, and so again, going back to don't condemn, forgive yourself, and then do some inner work again to see like how much love, where can I feel safe to feel my anger? And then when it's playing out, maybe you do have a split second to be like, okay, am I gonna go there or not? And the judgment of ourselves and keeping that, as we judge and condemn, that's what keeps the stuff alive as well. That's why I work on that, because it's like you don't give yourself a way out, right?
Right.
You don't give yourself like, oh, I made a mistake or this. It's like, it's kind of like when those thoughts in our head that are constant, right? Where there's no barrier. I wouldn't say things to you that I would say to myself, but if I was saying them out loud, people would be like, what's wrong with you? Or if I heard them out loud, I would maybe have a barrier, but there's no barrier. So there's certain things you just have to kind of be like, okay, I have some anger stuff. That's cool. I'm going to work on it. And then give yourself time.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. That's beautiful. Thank you. And I am lamenting that our time has almost disappeared. So a couple quick questions before the big final question. Um, how is best for people to get a hold of you?
At my website, donnapiper.com, or really email donna@donnapiper.com. I am on Instagram and all the other places, but email is like, I get that right away and I respond. So
Gotcha. Cool.
donna@donnapiper.com.
Yeah, and I can rephrase it, not get a hold of you, contact you, reach
Yes,
out to you. Let's
contact
put
you.
it that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
And so for anybody that's listening, not seeing, it's DonnaPiper.com. And Donna, do I remember correctly that you offered a gift for our audience?
I do. So I have if you go to, I think it'll be in your show notes. I have it down here too. There's a discount code of love is the discount code. So if you want to try out, I have a 25-minute or a 55-minute Akashic Records consultation, reading, healing, whatever comes up. So that discount code will give you a percentage off of that for being a listener.
Wow, cool. Awesome. That's beautiful. Okay, thank you for that. And if I were a female listener, I'd be jumping on that myself. I hope y'all do take advantage of that. And the discount code again is LOVE, LOVE. And all right, perfect. So then, gosh, that brings us up to the final question, the big question, the impossible question. I say it's the impossible question because it's so big and you have so much experience, and yet I am asking you to boil it all down, to distill everything that you know and you've experienced. And if you had one thing to share with our audience that would help them to live a vibrant, thriving life, what's the one thing that you share?
Just start, just do it. And if you've done it before, don't give up. Continue to be curious about your life and what you want, your dreams, that because you have them, they are for you to come true. So just start to explore, be curious, and you'll never go wrong with going inside to get whatever you want outside.
I love that. Thank you. Just start, right? Like carpe diem, get into it. I mean, you didn't say these words, but part of what I heard was commit to it. Know it's possible. You deserve it. Get into it right away. And you did say never stop, right? So that's beautiful. Thank you. Mm-hmm. So Donna, gosh, what an honor and a pleasure it's been. Thank you so much for not only for being here, but all the work that you've done and the transformation you've created in yourself. I know it's taken courage and work. I can feel your depth and your authenticity. So thank you for the work you're doing in the world, that you've done on yourself, and for taking this time to be with us.
Thank you so much for your time. It was such a great time to be here. I appreciate it.
Yay. Okay, cool. Awesome. And for y'all in the audience, thank you. You are the superstars, the heroes of this story. Thank you so much for not just being interested in a vibrant, thriving life. You're doing something about it, right? You're tuning in, you're getting educated, and you're going to do something more about it, right? You're going to take another step. You're going to take like one of those 439 gold nuggets that Donna brought forward today, and you're going to say, I'm going to try that out. I'm going to put it into play in my life. I'm going to stick with it for a while, right? Because it matters. You matter. The life you live matters. It changes the world. And I love you. I appreciate you. I'm so grateful that you've been here with us. Tune in again soon, please. Thank you. Hasta la pasta. Aloha. Mahalo for tuning in to the Art of Vibrant Living show, y'all. I'm Daniel Aaron, and may you live with great vibrancy.